The Square Ball Podcast.
Hello there, welcome to Propaganda that's brought to you with Levi Solicitors. There's a 10% discount on your legal fees. levisolicitors.co.uk/The Square Ball. Dan, Michael and Moscow with you today on Propaganda, the show where we find out what's been said about Leeds United, both by you and by the opposition fans. It's a two-parter. First part is where we get the feedback from our TSB Plus members about the match ball that we did in the wake of the Everton game, which was probably a low point for the season, fair to say. Are we all looking forward to this?
Well, might as well.
In for a penny, in for a pound. Well, the first big talking point was something that did come up on the match ball, and it was a fairly, it was a fallow match ball. I felt like in terms of talking points and funny points, but we got two little points. Richarlison's nipples.
I was compelled to look at this up because I'd missed them at the time.
Yeah,
but you're right. Titchy little things, aren't they?
Yeah.
I've got a picture of them there on the prep sheet. I don't know. Around the, let's be honest.
We'll stick these in the video version so you can see.
Let's be honest around the table. How's yours size up?
Well, they're bigger than those.
Yeah, mine too. I think they're like 5 pence size at most.
Yeah, I am relatively small of nipple.
I'm at least 1 pence,
but I think I'm bigger than those.
Do you remember a halfpenny? Did you ever see a halfpenny?
Is that an eightpenny?
You mean a halfpenny?
Or a threepenny bit, which is rhyming slang.
Yes. Yeah. Look them up if you're interested.
Well, I say we'll stick them on the video version because it's a little nipple, isn't it? And he's going to get a book in there for taking his shirt off. But he's quite hairless as well as Richarlison there, isn't he? He looks very smooth. Maybe a little bit of waxing.
Him and Frank going down the salon together.
And Colin, Neil Warnock, of course, famously saying that his daughters couldn't believe how smooth he is.
Look at this.
Hey, Amy, run your hand across there.
I can't believe that she's being told about it.
Dad, put your shirt back on. Right then. Well, I mean, the talking points in the feedback were pretty much what you'd expect. I mean, there's no surprises here. So is this where we get into the post-mortem? Do we have to do the post-mortem?
Pretty much. I mean, most of the points cover Bielsa, his team selection, and
tactics and subs,
and Roberts over Gelhardt. That covers like the majority of what is there, doesn't it? So where do we start? I can see there are different stats been brought to this sheet. I guess you put on the ones from the Athletic, Moscow.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, the three at the back thing, because obviously that was a point on the match ball where I was disputing your claim that we can never win playing three at the back, and I had this in mind because it's something Phil Hay did after we lost to Southampton, playing three at the back with Match's Click being totally useless in midfield, and we have a 76% win rate, which is mad. And that needs more context, but since that game we have played Norwich with three at the back and won, and then Brentford and drew, and then Everton and lost. So it's got, I can't do the maths properly, but that stays the same, doesn't it? The win rate is still approximately 70 odd. But all the other caveats are that we do play loads worse. Like, we give away more chances, we have fewer chances, and that often when we're playing three at the back, it's against teams who are worse, because Liverpool will tend to play they stick to what they're doing. They play one up front. Manchester City don't play anybody up front. So against them, we do two at the back, and obviously it's harder to play against those teams. But it's a weird thing, because whenever we play three at the back, I always look at it and think, this is going to be terrible. And the games are always kind of much more dicey and bad. But then you look at actually how many times we've lost playing three at the back, and it's less than 25, less than a quarter. So it's a strange thing, isn't it?
It is a bit of an enigma, because I mean, look at the examples from this season. Burnley, when we drew there early in the season, we were bad that day, weren't we? We weren't great. Southampton, obviously terrible. Yeah. Norwich, we made really heavy weather of it, albeit we were under a lot of pressure at that time.
We did essentially only win that because Tim Krul let a crap shot underneath him. It was Rodrigo, wasn't it, from quite far out, and it kind of bounced under.
Yeah, and Rafa scored as well, didn't he? When he cut inside, scored that beauty.
And then Brentford needed the last minute from Bamford to save it. The the difference I can think of is Phillips.
Yeah.
When Phillips plays in front of our back three, we are fine when it's Click. Well, not fine, but we're a lot better. He can do the job of like two or three players and dominate the area where Everton dominated us, because Click was just out of it, which Bielsa ended up saying, which again, the question is, why did you pick Click there again then?
Yeah.
And the Brentford game, we had Forshaw and Phillips, which you can argue with that setup. That does give us a good amount of control there, because they're both inclined to sit, aren't they? Whereas, you look at the Southampton game, which was the other one, which was it's probably the other terrible performance this season. I mean, I know there've been the old thrashing in there as well, but a bad performance against a team we could realistically expect to get something from, and that was Rodrigo, Roberts and Click, which, just as on Saturday, you look at the centre of the team and you go, there's not a lot of defence in there, is there?
I mean, now it's Tuesday, I feel able to rationalise it a lot more, and you can identify specific causes for why we were so bad. I think you're probably better at that than we are, Moscow, in that you're able to pinpoint things when we're both turning into emotional idiots in the post-match. But I honestly, I think this last couple of days has been as bad as I've felt all season with it, and I think it goes back to what you're saying there, actually, about why Click when Forshaw was the obvious one, and everybody kind of felt it in the run-up to it, but you just kind of hope beyond hope that it doesn't cost us, but then it does, and we're abysmal, and when it goes bad, it goes really bad really quickly, and you fear that he's not learning, and therefore the whole season's in jeopardy, and it spirals, doesn't it? It just completely spirals. But then I've driven past Ellen Road this morning, and I said to you on the way in, Michael, didn't I? I've been sulking for 2 days. I mean, far beyond what is reasonable for a grown man. But then I've just driven past Ellen Road and gone, I can't stay mad at you for too long.
It has a double aspect in this game as well, because you're thinking, why not Forshaw? And maybe there's a fitness thing that we don't know about, who knows? But then it also has the why not Van der Beek aspect as well, which was just kind of fated that, of course, he's going to have a good game after Bielsa said, no Van der Beek. Whereas he probably would have been excellent for us in that position where we stuck Click.
I think that's it as well. It all goes back to that, doesn't it? And when you talk about this, the spiralling thoughts, it's about the whole policy and the whole season being on the line. And then if we go down, does that Bielsa, is he undoing his own legacy and all that? And it just, I don't know. It's not a good place to be, is it, when it all goes so spectacularly bad? It's not like we've lost by a narrow margin. We just got absolutely dicked.
I think it comes through in the feedback, actually. A few people were kind of almost going on the line of, I don't want this to happen to Bielsa as well, which is it's kind of how I feel. I almost think I don't want it to end like this. Like if the worst did happen and we went down this season with Bielsa in charge, it would kind of invalidate. It's like a relationship that turns really bad at the end, and it wipes out the good bit almost, which it shouldn't do. But it'd be hard to not kind of think, well,
his mandate was to get us up, wasn't it? And he got us up. So then if he takes us down again, it's kind of it's taken us back to it's a net zero, isn't it?
We'd obviously be going down in much better shape as a club. We'd have a much better financial position. We'd have a more depth in the youth system, for all that's worth, and all that sort of stuff. But it would undeniably be. I mean,
I was going to say
like a stepping back into the before times.
Joe, I think, is in the comments, has said, I'm slowly coming round to the idea of Bielsa leaving at the end of the season. And I think that is one of the issues that does kind of underpin this as well, is the idea that when this goes bad, and it feels like it's gone bad more than it's gone well this season, it's about, net cost, isn't it? And that's what Joe picks out. So it used to be a one-off every now and again, but now it's every few weeks. So it feels like diminishing returns, doesn't it?
The counter to that, and obviously I'm going to have a counter, is the things that we'd like Bielsa to do in terms of being more defensive, more solid, have a bigger squad, and not for the board to spend more money on transfers until they got to January and did something about it, wasn't doing a lot of good for clubs like Newcastle or Everton, who have bigger squads set up defensively in every game. Burnley do the kind of, they get a lot of credit for staying in games and then they lose. They've only won one all season. So it's looking for sometimes when things are bad, you start looking for a magic bullet and you think, well, if you'd only play, 4 at the back, we'd win all the time. But then you look at other teams who play 4 at the back and don't, and there isn't that simple thing. And I think that's where the 3 at the back thing is interesting, because we have that perception, and I have that as well, where I dread us playing it. And then you look at the statistics of how many games we win or lose that way, and it's like, oh, actually, it's not as bad as it feels. It's just in the moment, it's difficult to get out from that. I mean, so I'm wary of kind of it's the grass always greener and being careful what you wish for and that kind of stuff. Of like, if it was as simple as having a bigger squad and being more solid defensively, Newcastle would have been much higher up the league than us all season.
I mean, I think though you can find smaller examples, though it doesn't always have to be a magic bullet. I'll give you a perfect example. Last season, when we got good results at home against Man United, Liverpool, I include in that, we played a little bit deeper. Now, this is with having better midfielders in position, but we would play a little bit deeper and then pick our moments to break. So it wasn't quite as thrilling, but it felt like we were more competitive. And I think in that, for example, that early spell in the Everton games, let's say the first 15 minutes, they came out of the blocks, and I'd said to the pair of you when we were sat in here, if we can ride this out and hopefully settle into the game, just don't concede. That's what we need to make sure we don't do, is don't concede, stay in the game, and then we'll get our chance. Now, had we just maybe sat a bit deeper for 15 minutes, taken the sting out of the game and got, through that spell, rather than just playing like wide open like we were and inviting them on time after time after time. And that's when it goes back to the idea of doubting Bielsa, because you want him to have a plan B almost, don't you, when plan A isn't working so spectacularly badly. It's just do some basic stuff like sit a bit deeper, absorb the pressure, stop them, frustrate them, get the crowds to turn. But it feels like we almost hang on to the ideal so much that it cost us, and we went 1-0 down, and as soon as we were 1-0 down, that was done.
The problem with the opening goal, though, is that it didn't come from being open as such. It was 3 mistakes we let, and it showed both how 3 at the back can work, and then also how it can fail in the first part of it, because Everton kept taking Anthony Gordon inside, and he takes Luke Ayling with him, and that leaves Rafinha one-on-one against their left-back, John Joe Kenny, which I think is why Rafinha ended up going off. It's because he was always being left one-on-one and losing. He gets beaten way too easily by Kenny. So there's a personal duel there that our best player has lost. But then you still, because we have 3 defenders against their 2 forwards, Kenny, in the left-hand side of their penalty area, has got nobody to cross to. So he ends up ballooning it out to the other wing. It's a terrible ball, and it kind of... there's the failure, because we've got loads of space that we've left Rafinha one-on-one, but then there's also the success, because if he beats Rafinha, he's got nothing he can do with the ball and the attack should end. Then what happens is Coleman beats Harrison one-on-one, and again you're saying, Jackie, just tackle him, don't let him beat you. And once he's past him, we've got this extra player, we've got their right back is now storming towards our penalty area. Click, he's marking Van der Beek, he's his man for most of the game, and he's next to him. And he is the one who is the obvious choice to go and stop Coleman. And he looks, Rodrigo is standing the other side of Van der Beek. So he's like, right, Rodrigo's got Van der Beek, I'll go and challenge Coleman. Rodrigo doesn't notice and just walks very slowly in the opposite direction away from Van der Beek, who cannot believe it. You see him suddenly, he points into the penalty area, he's like, I'm free, look at this. And that's when it breaks as a ball it's passed from Coleman to Gordon, and he plays it into Van der Beek, and then we almost get away with it with Llorente challenging Calvert-Lewin on the line. There's like the last ditch attempt, but it's Coleman steaming in. So it was kind of how 3 at the back can deal with an attack in the first phase, because they couldn't find their forwards, so that cross didn't work. But then when they actually did score, we had probably about 7 or 8 players all in defence, all marking up, and it took Rodrigo not doing his job and Harrison not doing his job meant it broke. And so it's individuals not doing the job properly, but then it's also the system does ask a real high level of concentration from the individuals, of like Rodrigo must be on the ball all the time to watch his man, which other systems, I feel like Lee Clark might systems, but others will have more slack built into them. And it's one of the weird things, because it was terrifying all day how open we were and how often they came running through, but then the blocks and the tackles and last ditch attempts and the saves did actually stop Everton from scoring that way. They got a corner that they scored from, because we can't defend corners, which is a whole other issue to absolutely bash Bielsa over the head over, and then pressing us into a mistake in the last 10 minutes. But all those chances, and this is the thing about the 2 sides of the win rate, where we win a load of games, but we give up loads and loads of opportunities to lose them when we play like that. And I think it's when Bielsa is putting us out like that, he's doing that calculation of we'll get away with it because their strikers will be nullified by 3 and their other players won't be able to do it as long as everybody does the job properly. And that's where you can then trace back to, well, we need better players. We need a better player than quick in midfield.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly what I thought.
But then Rafinha is our best player and didn't do his job stopping their left back from. So it's then how good a player do you need?
Yeah, it snowballs, doesn't it? But I was going to say that's exactly what I ended up thinking about. The Arsenal home game when you had the players just like, I'm trying to think, it was Odegaard, wasn't it? Who was in their midfield just finding acres of space, just knew exactly how to create that half a yard. So it was easy to win the individual battles because their players were just, quite frankly, miles better than ours on the day.
I think the one thing with going through the goals, and you are right to say that the goals were like, in a way, not indicative of the game as a whole, were they? But there were other chances, like Gordon was in within the first minute or two, wasn't he? And that was a good save. And towards the end, I know there was the unbelievable save Melier put in from Rondon.
Save of the season.
So there were some really good chances in there from on other days you would ordinarily expect them to score. So on balance, it probably was about right as a scoreline. It's just that the goals that went in were kind of unusual. They weren't indicative of the general pattern of play, were they? Just on the sofa score momentum thing that we look at, it's just Everton. Really, we get the odd little peak on it, but there's nothing really.
That's the other problem with three at the back. So you can get away with it defensively. So Kenny can get in; he's got nowhere to cross to. But getting out is much more difficult. It makes it a lot more difficult for us to score.
Yeah. There was no out ball from the defence, was there? I think that was very obvious. We quite often gave away possession, which is unusual for us, just kicking it into the midfield where there should be a Forshaw or a Phillips, but actually there was Click and Rodrigo stood much further up the field and there was nowhere for them to go to. So.
The other utterly bizarre thing, and I do just point these things out as bizarre, is our pass completion was loads better than theirs. First half and second half.
But it's because so many of our passes were just around the back three, weren't they? And back to Melier. If you looked at anything vaguely progressive, I imagine our stats are probably quite bad.
I think at half time I tried breaking it down, and we had better passing in the final third than they did. It's just weird. It's one of those, this is why I don't trust stats.
Yeah.
Because I trust actually your eyes and my eyes of looking at it and going, we were bloody awful.
Wisconsin Todd actually in the comments bringing up the Bielsa Roberts Gelhardt axis, describes it as poisoning the well. Says you guys may not want to talk about it, but most fans do because it's poisoning the well for all concerned. I mean, the thing is, what more can we say about it that hasn't been said 1,000 times? We know why he's using him. I don't agree with the way that Bielsa is choosing to use Roberts over Gelhardt. Equally, we don't know for sure that Gelhardt would make any difference in the games. It's all based on an imaginary scenario, isn't it? So I'm not sure what else there is to say other than until he gives Gelhardt a run in the team to prove the point, what can we do? I mean, he's not listening to us, is he? I mean,
I would much rather see Gelhardt play in these games.
I agree with the point. I'd like to see square pegs in square holes, quite frankly,
and
as well.
I thought taking our best player off for him made absolutely no sense as well on the weekend. Rafinha is consistently the most creative player we have and the most likely source of a goal, either via an assist or scoring himself, and I didn't see it. I don't think he was playing badly enough to justify taking him off. He was worse against Villa and stayed on the pitch in that one, which seemed odd. It felt like in that one we were actually keeping him on because we thought, well, there's a chance he'll produce a bit of something, whereas in this we didn't. And I felt like him going off at half time and Roberts coming on, and with already having, it removed the possibility of Gelhardt coming on as well because we'd had to make the change with Dallas. So the substitutions at half time, it did feel
it set the game, didn't it?
It was a bit like, well, that's it then.
Yeah.
It felt.
I think it might have been cumulative because he gave him the second half at Villa and he didn't do anything. So he's like, I could give him the second half here and just get the same. And then also I think defensive, I think it was more about getting Dan James on the right to protect Luke Ayling and stop their fullback than it was about, I really think Tyler Roberts is going to come on and score a hat-trick and win this game for us, which I would prefer to see. I want to see Gelhardt play more. I want to see less sort of 24/7 attacks on Tyler Roberts at the same time, but I would like to see Gelhardt play more. But again, I don't think Gelhardt was going to score a hat-trick in this game and win it either. And I don't think Rafinha was going to do anything. So I think it did just come down to, the first goal highlights it, that if Rafinha's just going to get skinned by their left back, then we know that Dan James is going to run and tackle and fight all the way in a way that he won't. And because of the way that Everton kept dragging Luke Ayling out of position, as they kept Iwobi on the other side was dragging held her out, it was a defensive move rather than a Tyler Roberts is going to come on and win the game move. So it's not quite the same as a Roberts versus Gelhardt choice. No. I mean, I agree that it's a fair point to try and help Luke Ayling down that side. You put Gelhardt on, there's a chance of something happening. Whereas I think with Tyler Roberts, unfortunately, it doesn't feel like that's the case. I think you said that in the match ball, didn't you? Like it doesn't. You never looked at that and thought, well, that's us going on the front foot for the entire second half. Whereas Gelhardt, you need. And the point about Rafinha, I think you might have made this on the match ball. I can't remember if I've imagined it or maybe you did, but it's about those moments of magic, isn't it? And having the people who can turn games. And unfortunately, it feels like with those changes, it was a concession of the game has effectively gone because we didn't have game changers on. You take Rafinha off and don't put Gelhardt on, so it removes two flair players.
It's a game we weren't in at all at any point, and it didn't feel like we were going to. But it feels like if you've got Joe Gelhardt on, there's a chance he'll just wriggle free on the edge of the box and put it in the bottom corner, and then it can change the pattern of the game, which was overwhelmingly going against us at this point. But it just felt like we removed the possibility of ever changing it.
It didn't improve things. I mean, James disappeared from the game once he was on the right. He was quite. Him and Rodrigo were. They produced probably the few opportunities that we had in the first half when Rodrigo put him through and he was tackled, and then there was another chance in there as well with James and Rodrigo, and then that just stopped happening in the second half. And I don't know. I do not dispute that Gelhardt should play more. So it's fine.
I think it's just weird to be here with Bielsa. Every manager of every club will have a player who they consistently put in the team, either bringing them off the bench or starting them, who a lot of the fans don't want. Like we've always had him at Leeds. It's just that for ages at Leeds, it didn't really matter because we were finishing 15th. So whether or not we were persisting with
Shane Lowry,
Shane Lowry, that did feel important because we were trying to get out of League One. But Grayson kept playing him, and it was pretty clear to everyone that he was shit. And it was just like, but what? So why? I know we didn't have great left back options then, but I think AD White was still kicking around, or they're probably injured. But just play someone else there is what it comes down to. And this is where I do feel bad for Roberts because it's not his fault that he gets brought on. And it's not his fault that he's maybe not good enough to turn a game for us. It's just that
Kevin says exactly this, by the way.
He's constantly in the firing line for it, and from that point of view,
there's a responsibility on Bielsa to take him out of the firing line as well, isn't there? Rather than just dig in.
And if Gelhardt came on and had 13 touches as Roberts did and didn't particularly contribute anything, people wouldn't actually be having to go at him. Weirdly, which is, I guess, shows that it's unfair. People should have been straight on his back as well, saying he's done nothing there, but they wouldn't have been, and it changes the feeling around the fan base
because he makes things happen. That's why. Yeah. So he gets credit for that, doesn't he?
In fact, we've seen a lot of Tyler Roberts now. And I don't think many people see a future for him.
Do you know what it goes back to? And I think it's a question you posed, actually, Moscow. I think it was a really good match report. And you asked a big question in it that I hadn't really sort of thought over until you raised it, which was, why do we just want the season to end now? Because that's how I feel. I just want to get to the summer. I'm not enjoying this season. And I think this is all part of that. It's like, why play Tyler Roberts and why not Gelhardt? And I feel like there's a general sense that they've underestimated the Premier League. They've underestimated the requirements of the squad size. Maybe Bielsa's, we don't know, his training methods, whatever it might be having an influence on the injury situation. It just feels like they haven't got the formula right this season. And I think as Phil Hay put it recently, it's like they've got the model, but it's been stretched beyond the limits this season. We've seen that. So I think to compound the issue by not addressing it in January with at least maybe one player, just something to change things up a little bit, makes you feel a bit miserable, doesn't it? And the question you posed was, why do we even want to see this season out? Are we supposed to be enjoying it? And it's because it's escapism. I think I thought about this question, and this is my form of escapism. So it's rooted in something selfish for me, and possibly for many other fans. Is that I want to enjoy this. This is my escapism from day-to-day bullshit. And at the minute, it's miserable, and I'm not enjoying it. And I want to enjoy it, and I want to feel like I've got confidence in the situation that's unfolding at Elland Road on a season-by-season basis, and I really feel like they've got it wrong this season, whether that's Bielsa, the management, the investment, the shape of the squad, whatever it is, the training. I don't quite know what it is, can't put my finger on the single thing, but it feels like they've got it wrong this season.
I feel like we maybe prematurely thought it was all fixed as well, because that's how it felt. It felt like we'd finally got out of the Championship. We'd had a really strong season in the Premier League. It's like, this is it, we're established. We are instantly back to 1999 or whatever. We're just ready to take off again in this league, and it'll be fine. I think the reason I want it to be over is because I just want to know that it's fine for another season, and that summer gives us the opportunity to address things properly, get everyone finally fit again, and maybe just start again next year.
Humans hate uncertainty, don't they?
And it's just the feeling of like the nagging doubt that we might go down and that this all gets torn up again in terms of Phillips going, Rafinha going, Melia going, and having to start again in the Championship. We'd start again in the Championship in a strong position because we'd have a load of Premier League money, we'd have a load of money from selling at least 3 or 4 players, and we'd still have quite a strong squad. It wouldn't be like before.
But it's terrible, isn't it?
It's just, the idea of it is just awful, and I cannot bear the thought of it, and it nags at me day and night now. I was looking at the West Brom Blackburn score last night and thinking, please not again.
I switched it over for 5 minutes and turned it off because it made me feel sad. Yeah, I noticed it was on. I thought we can't be having any of that bullshit in our lives, which, dreadful and entitled. But here we are. We are Leeds and all that.
But I guess the question I was posing is with 15 games to go, and the next 3 look terrible, but the ones that come afterwards look much more within our range to win at a time when hopefully Calvin Phillips will be back and making a big difference. If Pat Bamford comes back at some point, those are 2 big players returning to our team that we've missed a lot. Bamford, frankly, a lazy season from Bamford. I don't think we've I almost wish we'd lost that game against Brentford and his hamstring had been fine and he played. He could have then played the next games and we could have seen him for the last 10 games since and had more. But there's still a long way to go in that respect. And I think it's kind of the, relegating us this weekend felt premature when, if you do go back to last season, it was the last 10 games that needed, it was a combination of pressure being off, I guess, and also going a bit more defensive in those games against the top sides, that we suddenly went on that run where we won game after game after game and lost at Brighton in a complete reversion to how we were against Everton, probably similar level of awful performance. And that was the one when, everyone wanted Alioski should never play for the club again. And then he came back the next week and was brilliant until the end of the season and is now the big missing player. So there's so many things can happen between now and then. And this weekend, we were awful against Everton, but then we're still 6 points clear of the relegated teams who... Did any of them score? The teams in the bottom 3, they didn't, did they? They all lost. None of them scored.
Apart from Newcastle, who gained ground. But it's actually opened up a bit of a gap, hasn't it, now, almost? So it looks like, you don't want to tempt fate at this stage, but that bottom 3 could hopefully be bedded in. Particularly Norwich have got a set of fixtures that are looking bad, similar to ours. And I think the other 2 look relatively hopeless. If we get a couple more wins between now and the end of the season, you're talking about the bottom 3 having to essentially double their output from where they are right now, which you just don't see happening. And again, this actually just goes back to the state of the Prem and talking about not enjoying it. And the Premier League is a fairly miserable place, isn't it? Particularly for just about the entire bottom half. It's not a lot of fun. That said, it's better than the alternative.
Well, I don't know. Yes, I don't think people were this annoyed about finishing 15th, or you're a bit further away from the bottom 3, but finishing bottom half of the Championship. I don't know if that was just acceptance and we're just used to it.
It's a bigger division, you're right.
But we would get to this stage of the season and the season was over, and you just...
This isn't over, that's the problem.
Yeah, I guess so. But then you just... but it didn't generate the kind of anger. And I suppose the thing as well with people, this idea that maybe, without Bielsa we'd be doing better. What I was saying at the start is, if we did have a different manager who played more defensive and a bigger squad and all this, we'd probably still be like 15th, 14th, 13th. Brentford are ahead of us and haven't won they've won 1 in 7. All the others have lost, and it's kind of... so the other teams in the Premier League who do things right aren't doing so much better than us who are doing everything wrong. That makes me think, well, if we don't do what they do, then we're completely sunk and lost. So then I kind of think, well, at least Bielsa's,
trying to give us fun and he's a decent human. And the likes of
like Brighton and Palace, who've been around the division for a while, they still have years. I know Brighton are having a better season this year, but you pointed out before, Moscow, they've had is it 3 in a row, 4 in a row, something like that, where they've always hovered in this area.
Brighton win 9 games every season and never a single game more, and they've been in the Premier League for years. And I think I suppose this is an unsaid part of it as well, is that we're Leeds United.
They've only won 7 already this season,
So they've got 2 to go. We're Leeds United, And because of who we are and how we feel about our football club, we feel like we come in the Premier League, we finished 9th, and then we're marching on for Europe. And it's unrealistic because you look at teams like Brighton, Palace, Wolves, and the teams that went down in their second seasons, like Sheffield United, they come up and they never get beyond that mid-table
I think Wolves did get to Europe once.
And now they've gone back again.
Oh, it's the 7th, aren't they, at the minute, Wolves? And they're doing all right, to be fair to Wolves.
But it's taken them a few years.
And Wolves, in fairness, have spent fortunes getting there as well.
Well, I'm just going to say, just going back to the Brighton thing, they are currently 9th.
Wolves
so if you look above Brighton, you've got then Spurs, Wolves. There's like another subset of clubs arriving there. But Brighton have won 7 games, and there's nobody beneath them apart from Villa, who've won 8, that's kind of done any more than that. We're a couple of wins away from being mid-table.
That's mad, isn't it?
But that's how
we're also a couple of wins, defeats away from going down. So it's interesting to see what happens. Is kind of where I feel about. But then I think remembering it's the second season is a big thing. So I don't know how much better somebody else playing a different way would get a second season in the Premier League. Leeds United, any better.
I don't think any of us want
further that would mean anything.
I don't think any of us want Bielsa out either, do we? Because to do it now would be a huge gamble, I would say, because everything that has been built around this style of play to try and change it completely with a dozen games left or whatever it'd be for a new manager to come in on, it would be ridiculous. Whether or not what happens in summer, I've no idea. It feels
this does feel. I think that's the other sadness attached to this, is that this does feel like late stage Bielsa now, doesn't it?
It can still turn it around though. If we have the run we had at the end of last season, absolutely no one will even be discussing this.
But if you went online after we beat West Ham and then even after drawing against Aston Villa, it's all this team needs is another midfielder, and we'll have Bielsa's going to sign up for next season, and it's going to be great. And then we play like we did against Everton, and it's gone, well, it looks like it's his last season.
I'm saying that's how it feels, and I didn't mean it necessarily is, but it feels this week, today, that's how it feels. Like in the wake of this, it's made me feel sad, and I'm kind of mourning for a thing that's gone, which was the promotion and the togetherness and the joy of all that. Whereas if we win on Sunday, I'll be absolutely bouncing, this is brilliant.
In the wake of promotion, and last year, I think we described it as like peacetime at Leeds United. Everyone was just getting on. No one wanted a manager sacked. Everyone liked all the players, and that's kind of disappeared. It's disappeared quite spectacularly.
It's only ever fleeting, isn't it?
With what are essentially only really a few bad results this year. I know we've not hit the heights of last year, but realistically, if we'd managed to beat, Brentford at home and Wolves at home, the table would look absolutely fine now.
It took us a long time last season to win more than 2 in a row. There was the consistency was the big thing that we lacked, and this year we've lacked consistency again. But with the added influence of all the injuries that we didn't have last year, and that's kind of turned decent results. There is some pragmatism in the results where you look at how many we've drawn compared to last season, where we barely drew a game. So we picked up points along the way that maybe last season, would have been either defeats or wins. I don't know. They're not even doing anything completely terrible. Like if they finish 15th, it always used to be the thing in the Championship. If we get in the Premier League and we'd just stay in it, we'll finish 15th. That would be a lot better than this. And then it turns out, no, all those players have ruined everything good they ever did. It's kind of, I think that's it. It's trying to just take some of that heat out of it and just be. There's a long way to go, and it could still be absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what, lads, worse. This has felt like group therapy, because in the space of half an hour, you've convinced me that everything's actually all right.
Well, it's not. It's blatantly.
That annoys people too, though. This is what I'm saying about peacetime is over, because you're not allowed to be positive because you'll upset people who want to be negative, and you're not allowed to be negative because you'll upset people who want to be positive. But I think both sides think
mid-table is just the worst, isn't it?
and both sides of that think that the other side are being complete dicks, and. Either way, you're disregarding evidence.
But the worst thing is, and you must experience this as well, is that I exist in both spaces at the same time. Which is the ridiculous, like the duality of a football fan, isn't it? It's pathetic. I'm a grown-up and I should know better.
Just be nice to each other while you're doing it. Except we're all fucking idiots.
A big proportion of people won't accept this as a possibility, but imagine if we beat Scum.
Yeah.
Imagine how good that would be.
Even a draw on Sunday looks like a win, doesn't it, now after such bloodletting this week? So,
yeah.
Anyway.
And I think that's the thing of not wanting to wish the rest of the season away, because we waited 16 years for Scum at home with a crowd, and I think there's people saying they don't want to go. Like, come on, go anyway. And if we lose, then just go the next week, because you signed up for this.
Yeah.
Nobody, when you
You're
became
in for
a Leeds,
life now, you pricks.
yeah, when you became a Leeds fan, there were very few guarantees about winning ever. So you've had your lot.
I mean,
in
look
the
at
last
these.
two
I
seasons.
mean, we'll get onto this when we do the main show and the Man United preview, but they're not happy either. They're fourth and they're still not happy. No one's ever happy in football.
Fourth?
Yeah, I think so, probably. It's a stupid sport, isn't it? Everyone's miserable. Well, there you go. That wraps up part one of propaganda. We will do part two for you now, where we will look at what the opposition fans said. Hopefully, we'll go quite light on the Everton fans and just have a giggle over people. Is that all right, Michael?
For a little bit. I mean, Everton fans are all right, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't mind them, truthfully. They were Man United 5th, by the way.
Close enough.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse, I think. They're far more unbearable sets of supporters to have to listen to.
Look out for that then. That is on YouTube, the other part of this playlist. We'll see you over on that.
The Square Ball Podcast.